right, it's time to get the top voice on the show. John Bolton, who was part of Donald Trump's previous administration, joins me on the broadcast to talk more about what he feels as far as this administration is concerned. Mr. Bolton, thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking to me on India Sense. Let me start by asking you specifically about some very important picks in Trump 2.0 administration, including Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel as picks for very important posts in Trump 2.0.
Well, I think in the case of Tulsi Gabbard, she has made statements over the years about Syria, about Russia, about the war with Ukraine, about a variety of other subjects that are not just extreme in the context of the spectrum of American political views, but are really on another planet. And this is something that's been observed by a number of political leaders over the years. A year or two ago, Senator Mitt Romney said that her remarks were treasonous. In 2016, Hillary Clinton, then the Democratic presidential nominee, said that Tulsi Gabbard was being groomed by the Russians as a presidential candidate. So, I mean, here you have two diverse points of view, one Democratic, one Republican, two presidential candidates, basically saying that her views were too extreme, really, to be given a position of trust and confidence in the government. So I think we'll have a full field FBI investigation on her and on the other candidates, and then we'll have hearings before the Senate Intelligence Committee. We'll see. In terms of Kash Patel, he doesn't have the experience or the background to be an FBI director. His credibility has been repeatedly called into question. And I think the most disturbing aspect for him is that to have a yes man as director of the FBI, an incredibly powerful law enforcement investigatory capability, is something that I think is going to get very, very real scrutiny in the Senate when he comes up for his confirmation.
Okay, but what do you make of Chris Wray's announcement to resign and make way for Kash Patel as the next FBI director?
Right. Well, I think really it was very clear Trump was going to replace Wray. He was going to fire him, or one way or another, Chris Wray would be out of office. So actually, I would consider his resignation the first resignation of the Trump term, not although it occurred during Biden's presidency. It really was something that would have happened on January the 20th or the 21st after Trump was inaugurated. I know that had to be a hard decision to make. I've resigned from positions in government. It's very difficult, but the reason he gave, I think, is important and valid. He didn't want to damage the FBI by being part of the argument over whether Kash Patel should replace him. So now it's not a question of, do you think Kash Patel is better than Chris Wray? It's a question of, here we have a vacancy in this very important job. Is the nominee qualified and fit to fill that job? And that's really what the question should be. It shouldn't be an argument about Chris Wray. It should be over Kash Patel.
Okay, I know there's a lot of talk about trade, immigration being his top priorities, but in your assessment, Ambassador Bolton, Trump's top focus when it comes to India?
Well, I think in his first term, Trump established a good personal relationship with Narendra Modi. I would expect that would continue. I would hope that there would be discussions, not just bilateral, but with Japan and Australia on the Asian Security Quad. I think that's more and more important. I think there are a number of trade issues that Trump will be interested in, because he's always interested in trade issues. And what happens on the tariff front in the early days is another major Trump initiative. We don't know exactly what he's going to do, but it could be very impactful. News that's just broken here in the United States is that Trump has invited Xi Jinping to his inauguration. I think he should invite Modi too, as long as he's doing that. We don't know of any foreign leader who's attended an American inauguration as far back as anybody can remember. But it's going to be very important. My own view is that the U.S.-India relationship could well be the dominant issue in the 21st century, and we have a lot to talk about and a lot to work on together. And I hope Trump understands that and acts on it.
Ambassador Bolton, you've been very critical of Trump's picks for his administration. What's the reason and the rationale for your criticism?
Well, it depends on the individual nominee. I think if you look at the total package so far of Trump's personnel announcements, some have been very good, some have not been very good. And particularly in the national security space, I think it's important that you have people of the highest character and integrity and qualifications. I'd say in selecting Senator Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, Congressman Michael Waltz as National Security Advisor, I think those are really excellent picks, and I think will serve the country well. Others not so much, and that's why in the American system you have the Senate providing what the Constitution calls advice and consent to the president on nominees, and that's the getting ready for that process to unfold is what we're doing right now.
I know there's a lot of decisions that Donald Trump plans to take on day one in his office, but in your assessment, what do you think will be the first set of decisions that he will take?
Well, I think he's made it very clear that his immediate priority is beginning the expulsion of all the illegal aliens that are now in the United States. He tried to put in a Muslim exclusion ban at the beginning of his first term. It was a complete debacle. He was not prepared. Met enormous resistance from the courts and so on. Now, they've had a long time to plan this deportation program. Maybe it will go better. We'll see. But I think in the many executive orders that you can expect to be signed afternoon on the 20th of January, those relating to this expulsion of the illegal aliens will be among the top. So a lot of the early impressions of Trump's performance in the first days of his new term will be focused on how that program goes. I don't have any inside knowledge of it, and frankly, you can do a lot of planning. It doesn't guarantee success. The American boxer Mike Tyson once said, "Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face," and that's we'll just have to see how this immigration operation is actually implemented.
Let me ask you about West Asia. Given the fact that there is a weakened Iran right now, Russia's hold has also weakened. How do you think Donald Trump will utilize this situation right now in terms of his West Asia policy?
Well, I think this developments in the Middle East, which are moving rapidly as we speak, are some of the most dramatic in recent history. The fall of the Assad regime is the end of a 50-year family dictatorship in Syria. It's the end of the Ba'ath Party, which used to rule in both Syria and Iraq. Saddam Hussein came out of the Ba'ath Party structure. So history is really changing as we see it. This is another major defeat for the Ayatollahs in Tehran. But we don't know whether the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham group, HTS, is still a terrorist group as it was years ago. It was an offshoot of ISIS, or whether it's changed its stripes. And at this point, I think it's only prudent that we assume that they still believe what they said they believe for these past 10 or 15 years, which is why President Biden over the weekend ordered the bombing of some 75 ISIS targets, storage depots and the like in eastern Syria, and why the Israelis have gone in and destroyed what's left of the Syrian Navy and a considerable part of the Syrian Air Force to make sure those capabilities didn't fall into the hands of a terrorist group. But the weakening of Iran, as you mentioned, the weakening of Russia, risking being pushed out of its naval base at Tartus and the air base at Latakia, very, very significant. Events are moving in the Middle East. This is a time when even more change could come.
And lastly, what do you think are the strategic priorities, they could be even long-term, for Donald Trump when it comes to the India-US relationship?
Well, I think the most important issue to discuss between India and the U.S. is how to deal with the emerging China-Russia axis. We can see it at work in Ukraine. We see the outriders like North Korea and Iran. The threat that China poses along the Indo-Pacific periphery, I think, is very real. I understand the history of India's relations with Russia, but the closer Russia gets to China, the more it calls that history into question. So, talking about what the strategic interests of the U.S. and India are and how to deal with this new axis, I think should be a high priority.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a lot more to talk about, Ambassador Bolton, and I'm afraid we're completely out of time here, but we're going to have this conversation again soon. Thanks much for taking out the time speaking to me on NDTV. And in fact, on that note, as we wrap things up, viewers, scan the QR code that is flashing on your screens right now for all the other stories, exclusive interviews, perspectives, all that and more only on India Sense YouTube playlist. Thank you so much for watching this edition.